Welcome to Sacrilegious Discourse.
For this is what the Sovereign Lord says.
Why do you need prophets to tell people who you are and what you want?
If you can justify everything that the God of the Bible has done, then you can justify any of your behavior.
A lot of this mentality is trickling into what is now mainstream right-wing Christianity.
I am capable of empathy greater than this God of the Bible.
This is a Bible that they tell kids. This is the good Lord. This is the good book. He is fantasizing about murder, mass murder.
Head over to sacrilegiousdiscourse.com right now to find out how to leave us a review or support us on Patreon.
Hey there, sinners and saints. It's your favorite Bible-bashing duo from Sacrilegious Discourse, and we need your help.
That's right, folks. We're raising funds for some heavenly equipment and a studio that doesn't sound like it's in the depths of hell.
Our current setup, let's just say it's more apocalypse than audiophile.
So if you want to hear us dissect the Bible without the background noise of demonic squirrels, chip in a few bucks.
We're aiming for $5,000 to upgrade our audio and build a studio worthy of blasphemous banter.
Donate today and help us spread the good word of atheism.
You can find a link right on our homepage, sacrilegiousdiscourse.com. Every dollar counts.
Even if it's from your collection plate. Husband!
Wife!
You can suck my Johnson.
Whoa, damn.
You like that for an intro?
That was an intro, yeah, that's something.
So do you know what we're doing today? Besides sucking my Johnson?
I do, but why don't you came up with that title?
I did.
So you're really excited about it. So
I feel so clever about it.
I'm going to let you share what we're talking about.
Okay, see, I wanted to talk about the moon cycles and how it influenced early Judaism and how we still rely on it for our calendar today.
Yeah.
And I was like really starting to get into it. And then you came in and said, we need to talk about the Johnson Act.
Yes, I
did. And I was like...
Because it's relevant. It's in the news.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that. And so I was like, boring. And you were like, it's important. Everybody's talking about it today. And I was like, all right. And then I looked it up and I was like, I get to tell everybody to suck my Johnson Act.
Right.
Yes.
Yes. And so, I think because we haven't had an episode out in like a week, we're probably going to put this one out public.
Yeah.
So,
I thought we would.
And especially, because it's politically relevant.
Well, yeah, it's very relevant, and everybody should be as furious as my mother-in-law.
Yeah, but generally, just to update everybody, if you don't know already, most of our special episodes will be exclusively on Patreon, but they will not be gate kept. So you just have to be a free member over there, and you can come over and listen whenever we do them, or you can join us on Discord live, which is what we're doing right now as we're recording this.
Tuesdays at 10 p.m. Eastern.
That's right. We will be probably updating our once a month thing to Tuesdays in the afternoon at 2 p.m. Eastern as well, because schedules.
Work.
Yeah. So Tuesdays, once a month, Tuesdays will be a bonanza of live podcast episodes.
It's going to be 2 lives in one day.
Yeah.
That's going to be fun.
It's a lot.
That's going to be fun. Yeah.
All right, so we're doing the Johnson Act.
We are, and I'm going to tell you what it is, why it's important, what changed, why we should care as Americans or as atheists or as just people, and some of the reporting on it and what we can do now.
Okay. Sounds good. Yeah. You ready to get into this then?
I sure as fuck am.
Let's do it.
Are you ready to suck my Johnson? All right. So we are going to talk about the Johnson Act.
Okay.
The Johnson Amendment.
Yes. Okay.
Now, prior to today, when you walked in and disrupted my idea of what we would talk about, did you actually know what the Johnson Amendment was?
So I knew recently because of the news, but
that's what I mean. Like prior to that, news.
I was aware of what that rule did. Yeah. I didn't necessarily know that it was called the Johnson Act, or if I did, I knew it at a different point in time that has long since passed. So no, I guess not officially, but I was aware of the rule, and I was that much made. I was very much aware of the rule.
Yeah, I mean, it basically is like the foundation of the foundation point, the pivotal point of separation of church and state. Like one of the yes. like tent pole legs of separation of church and state.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we all like know that term, separation of church and state, but I don't think we all realized that there was like an actual amendment that helped support that.
Sure.
And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And I had never heard of this because I don't know anything about anything. And I'm not afraid to admit that. And I suspect a lot of people don't.
Sure.
So we're all going to learn some things today.
Yeah.
So what is the Johnson Amendment? Ready?
Sure.
Okay. Do you want to give your little 2-second spiel on it?
I know it was done by Lyndon B. Johnson.
It sure as fuck was.
Yeah, and I know it was like 1950s.
54.
Yeah.
54.
And I know it even got bolstered by Reagan.
It did. Yeah. It was praised by left and right alike.
Yes.
Because it wasn't about really
bipartisan,
religion.
Thing.
So it's a provision in the U.S. tax code, what many might know of as the 501c3.
Right.
The don't tax me stuff.
Sure.
Tax-free organizations.
Yep.
And it was, as you said, introduced in 1954 by then Senator Lyndon B. Johnson. So he was only a senator at the time when he put this forward.
Right, right.
He introduced it into H.R. 8300, and that was the bill that became the IRS code.
Okay. All right.
And he did that after facing opposition from nonprofits that were attacking him politically.
Okay.
So it was personal, but it was also like, this is bullshit. Y'all are tax-free organizations taking sides. And that means
the government's giving you a benefit and you're using it for political purposes.
The people are paying for you to attack me, even though the people that are paying you to attack me may not even know that that's where their money is going.
Right.
That's bullshit.
Yeah.
He's like, stop. So it wasn't originally about religion. It was about limiting tax-exempt groups from becoming de facto political machines.
Sure.
And, that's a good thing for both sides, for all sides.
Yeah, absolutely.
It prohibits 501c3 nonprofit organizations, which include churches, charities, schools, universities, foundations, that kind of thing.
Now, I will say that it has acted, the IRS for years have kind of looked the other way.
They are very lax. They are very lax
with regard to churches.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Not other entities, but churches.
Yes, that is correct. Yeah. You have to come to them with so much stacked up proof of wrongdoing. Like, it's got to be immense for them to actually take a hard stand.
Well, the government doesn't like beating down religions.
It doesn't. It doesn't.
Like, that's not. They don't want to. It causes problems.
It does. So. It does. And if everybody would just behave, then it wouldn't be a problem. But
or we could just do it across the board. Like we just. This is the rule. You break it. You break it. Like that's the other option, right?
Yeah.
Like the other option is we don't get scared to enforce it.
That would be nice.
Right.
That would be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the Democrats are guilty of being pussies.
Oh yeah.
And wimps when it comes to enforcing laws. Like, they turn the other cheek to like the utmost, and I'm like, no, that's not what that means. You read it wrong too.
Right.
And they're never going to like you. Stop being a pick-me girl. Like, they're like, if we just follow all the rules so fucking hard that, we can never be questioned, then they won't accuse us of breaking the rules. And I'm like, have you met them?
Right.
That's not how that goes.
Yeah. No, it's not.
So stop it. Stop it.
Right.
It applies to all tax-exempt charities, not just religious ones, and it stops them from endorsing or opposing, either or, political candidates.
But my recollection of the whole thing is that they can't go against or endorse political candidates, but they can go against and endorse
topics. That's the next thing I was about to say. Yeah. It does not apply to or prohibit general or issue-based advocacy, educational voter guides, or discussion of issues such as abortion, poverty, immigration, or neutral get-out-the-vote efforts.
Right. And neutral is doing some hard work there, too, because
really
when you
is.
have a group that is leaning, obviously, because of their views, one direction, the get-out-the-vote, obviously, is going to be catered to that group.
Right.
You know, well, there's no way really around that, unfortunately.
Even discussing the issues. Let's talk about abortion.
Sure.
That's clearly the right hates it and the left, I mean, nobody loves it. I don't want to say we love it, but we do love bodily autonomy.
Right.
And that's what abortion, is about. And so we're allowed to talk about that. Unless
you're Trump, because he just grabs him by the pussy.
He does, but if you're a star, they let you do it.
Right, yeah.
So, what you gonna do?
Yeah.
This only restricts support or opposition for political candidates, FYI. So
sure.
There's that. Okay, here's why it matters. Okay.
It matters?
It matters.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
For democracy, it matters. It keeps religious institutions from becoming unregulated super PACs.
Okay. Are we still a democracy? Is that what we are considered these days?
From the outside, no. From the inside, we're pretending.
Okay.
I mean, there have been studies like by bipartisan. Is that the one where everybody's
both sides?
Yeah, even and equal and nice and good and we get along kind of thing?
Sure.
Yeah, there have been bipartisan studies by think tanks that have shown that we are fast sliding into oligarchy land and fascism and we're not a full democracy. I mean, we were never like a 100% democracy because of the way we do our voting. We're not, but we were like headed towards a socialist democracy.
We could have gone one of two directions. We went the wrong way.
We did.
We took now we're left turn at Albuquerque when we should have,
we did.
Gone the other way.
Now we're headed to Timbuktu or wherever
Something
the
like
fuck.
That, yeah,
I don't know. The amendment protects taxpayer-subsidized political influence, especially via organizations that don't have to disclose donors. That's a big deal. That's where we get into dark money.
Well, and
like
that's one of
churches.
and churches specifically don't have to even really file taxes.
No, they don't have to file. They don't have to disclose. They don't have to anything.
Right.
So they can do whatever the fuck they want.
And we have enough problem as atheists, as secular people, with churches having these gives from the government. Like, you don't have to, like, okay, I'm not saying that this should apply to your local, church that is struggling to get by. Maybe there is room for this. But like when you talk about churches like Joel Osteen or the fucking online or TV and TV evangelists or whatever, they don't need fucking tax breaks. They've got private jets. They've got multiple mansions. They've got fucking the most expensive cars.
They own islands.
They've got gold belts probably. I mean, who fucking knows? They're rich as fuck.
Yeah.
They don't need tax-free anything.
No, they do not.
And they are absolutely a business.
Yeah. A big business. So to be clear, it prevents the Johnson Amendment prevents taxpayer subsidies via tax exemption from funding partisan politics. Partisan politics.
Yes, that's the one.
Polly. She shells down by the seashore.
Yeah.
Okay. The Johnson Amendment serves as a guardrail to prevent religious institutions from becoming de facto political machines.
Served.
I mean, no, the law has not changed.
The law has not changed.
Which we will get into.
We can never get back to some semblance of democracy.
The law itself on the books has not changed.
I know.
At all. It's the interpretation of it that has.
Right.
And that matters.
Right. But let's take this too, right? There's going to be like organizations like FFRF, Freedom from Religion, and ACLU. There's going to be all kinds of groups fighting this, right? And probably will end up going to court over it. And then what? What if they decide this is the new way it's interpreted, then this becomes the law of the land. This is the way it sets. And we've got a Supreme Court that is just so willing to fuck us over with regard to how the Constitution is interpreted. And this is just setting more of that up.
It is. It matters that it didn't change on the books, because at least there's that eraser mark that it's one less eraser mark we have to deal with. You know what I mean? It's one less pen scratch.
Yeah.
It was always going to be the social acceptance of new norms. That is always going to be the problem.
What do you mean by that? Like, you're saying like
the people, the interpretation, the new norm, the way society feels about something.
What was always going to... I'm not a...
That's always going to be the problem. Like, the way, you know, it back in the 50s, like, dropping an N-bomb was no big deal, right? And now, like, we understand, like, we don't do that, right? Like, attitudes change by society.
Yeah.
Like, that's always the problem. And so what you're talking about is the people reinterpreting the law to match how they want, and that's the new law of the land. But that's the way it's always been. It's always been that how we interpret something is the current law of the land.
Well, but there's a problem, though. The problem is that we have a skewed Supreme Court that doesn't represent the land.
I agree with you.
And the general consensus of people in this country, even today, based on studies that I saw, say that well over 60% of the people in this country, it's much more than that, I believe, but well over 60% think that this should be a law, that they should not be able to do these things from the pulpit. They should not be able to endorse political candidates as a church, as nonprofits. This should stand as it was. But we have a Supreme Court that is changing the law of the land through their interpretations, unjustly taking away our rights in a manner that is, I don't even know how. I mean, this is just not. It's not democracy. Like,
no, I totally agree with you.
It has nothing to do with the way that we feel about things as a society. It has to do with the right wing pushing through people to these positions that are willing to fuck us over.
No, I totally agree with you. You are right.
That's all. Sorry.
No, you are right. It sucks, and I hate it. Yeah. So, to be clear, the Johnson Amendment preserves the separation of church and state, or did until yesterday, or the day before yesterday. By the time you're listening to this,
right,
Monday of this week.
Yeah.
Another reason why the Johnson Amendment matters is for religious neutrality. It helps ensure churches don't become tools of political parties. And moreover, it protects churches from themselves because it avoids splitting congregations over political divisions. And that is a big deal because we have seen some churches come out against this, actually. There are some churches that will split over this.
Definitely.
That is kind of crazy to watch it eat itself.
I think that division has been happening for a long time internally, even without this being, said by the IRS. There's been churches have become more and more political over time, and we've looked the other way. This is just putting that, topper on the cake,
the out loud verbalization.
Right.
Of that.
Yeah.
Even many clergy and religious organizations support the Johnson Amendment. There was a survey put out. Over 4,300 religious leaders and 100 plus denominations signed statements supporting it. And as Archbishop William E. Laurie put it, it is not a good idea for churches to engage in partisan politics. It would divide congregations and distract from their mission.
Well, if there's any church out there that doesn't want to enter into the endorsing candidates, it would be the Catholic Church, because they kind of walk the line, depending on what part of the country, in two different worlds. They live in two different worlds politically. So
they do, and they are against what is happening right now with regard to this,
because they don't want to have to endorse. They don't want to feel like they have to jump on that bandwagon.
No, they want to Like, we're out of this.
Yeah.
But the new pope, might that's going to be something to keep our eyes on. The Catholic Church may come out hard and strong opposed to what is happening.
Yeah.
Because of the political divide between the Pope and Vice President Vance. Like, they've exchanged barbs. So we'll see what happens. I don't know. I'm curious. But another reason that the Johnson Amendment matters, especially to atheist, secular, and non-religious Americans, is that without the Johnson Amendment, religious institutions can use tax-deductible donations to sway elections. Donations that atheists and others would be subsidizing through lost public tax revenue. Yeah. So to be clear, atheists end up subsidizing religion's political activity via tax benefits. And that is such bullshit.
It really is.
Like, I don't want to pay for that. I already have to pay for other shit. I don't want to pay for that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
The amendment served as a firewall, even if imperfect, between religious belief and civic governance. The repeal will further blur the lines between church and state, giving religious voice a disproportionate influence in lawmaking.
Yeah.
It's supposed to prevent erosion of religious privilege in public policy under the guise of free speech.
That's what I heard. We've been using a lot of things lately. We've been through. I say we. The right wing, the MAGA crowd. They've been using free speech as a cover for shitty things they want to get away with.
Yeah.
And it's just
like being able to promote Nazi ideals on Twitter and being like, "You're telling me I can't say stuff. You're attacking my free speech."
Well, and they I mean, I think that even applied back, like they were trying to do the free speech thing on like the making the cake thing and all that.
Yes.
Like that. There's all these things that they're trying to pull under this blanket of free speech.
They're using the rules. They're looking for loopholes and they're pulling threads.
And I have to say, we've had discussions about this between you and I that I'm very adamant about free speech to the point of absurdity, you know, and my idea of what free speech entails has changed over time because
it had to
of the internet, because of things that I don't know, but you can't quell an idea, right? But you also have to be like, you still can't yell fire in a fucking, you know, crowded theater,
right?
You know, like there are rules to free speech, and there always have been.
And the Overton window is just changing on what we're no longer going to find normal.
Right.
You know, with regard to that.
Yeah.
Because there was a time when I would have said, I fucking hate Nazis. And I still hate Nazis.
Well, yeah.
But there was a time when I would have said, but they have the right to get permits and gather and blah, 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 blah. Even though I hate what they stand for, I still
believe that.
I don't necessarily, because let me explain why.
Okay.
Because their gathering and the shit that they say is harmful to the people that they are attacking in their speech.
Okay, but that's a whole other issue though, right? Their ability to gather and have a gathering as a group of people should be protected. What they do at that gathering is a whole other story that falls under other laws.
Okay.
With regard to what they're doing.
I see what you're saying.
Right?
Yeah.
The ability to organize and have ideas and promote those ideas, as long as it's not harming other people, is something you absolutely have the right to do.
I think that the word harm should be really dissected there very clearly.
I agree.
Because let's say a Black person or a Jew is walking down the street not realizing that there is a Nazi assembly happening. Were they not harmed by hearing the bullhorn shouting those horrible things? They were. They absolutely fucking were. So That's my problem. That's why I have really...
But you can't outlaw offensive speech. You can outlaw the harm that comes from it. So if you instigate somebody to actually cause physical harm to that person, then that is a whole other issue.
I just think we really need to discuss and really define what the word harm means.
But you have to be careful about that, because when you talk about it from our point of view, from our perspective, and you say that
it will get turned on us. I know. Yeah. Every rule that you make to try to protect people in the name of decency gets turned on its head by the assholes that look for the loopholes and pull the threads. I know that.
Well, it's not even about loopholes. It's about what is perceived as harm. And if you choose to, if you are in power and you choose to perceive what we're saying as harm, then all of a sudden we're the ones that are being perceived as the Nazis.
I hear what you're saying, but I also feel like, and I'm reverting back to my black and white rather than the gray nuance, which I recognize is reductive and unfair. But I feel like currently the side that is in power is not just trying to but I'm just trying to share my perspective. They're not. Your perspective is not valid if it is actually harming people, which it is.
I agree. I don't disagree with you. I really don't. I'm merely stating that if we were to support something, you just have to be very exact about what you're supporting. You know,
right, and that's why I said I think that we need to discuss and define the word harm. Right. Because the word harm is ambiguous. What is harm? Like, a bee sting is harm. Does that warrant us, calling 911? I don't know. Depends. Like, most people might say no, right? But wouldn't you call 911 if the person with the bee sting was allergic to bees? Oh, yeah, there is an exception. So that's what I'm saying. Like, we really need to talk about the word harm, because I don't feel like anybody of any color, culture, religion, gender, sexuality should have to be exposed to this by just walking down the street. I was just walking down the street and there was a crowd of people shouting through a bullhorn about how much they hate me and want to hang me. That's bullshittery. That is harm.
But that could be, so that's what I'm saying, when you have to be exact about the way you restrict that kind of thing. You have to say that there are certain things that you cannot promote violence. You cannot promote
okay, but
you know what I'm saying? Like,
no, I don't, because let's talk about that. And we're getting off topic here, but that's okay. I like the discussion. Wouldn't you say that talking about how Jews will not replace us, as they were shouting in Charlottesville, right?
Right.
So, okay, were they inciting harm? No, they were not. But were their words harmful to Jews? Yes, they fucking absolutely fucking were. And so that's why I'm saying, again, we need to define the word harm better. Because was it inciting anybody to do anything? Not explicitly, but implicitly it sure as fuck was.
No, I agree. But you could look at this from the standpoint of the other side. If you put yourself in the shoes of someone who watches Fox News. Okay? Mm-hmm. Think of the things that they consider harmful to them.
I know.
It could get legislated either way.
I understand that. And that's why we have to be careful with our words, which is the point of what I'm saying. And we need to stop using ambiguous words like harm. We need to spell the shit out. And the more you spell it out, unfortunately, the more that you leave it open to loopholes. Because people looking for loopholes are gonna fucking find the loopholes, whether they exploit the ambiguity of the definition of the word, or whether they exploit the spaces between all of the very well spelled out thing. The problem is not the fucking words. The problem is the intent, and they understand the fucking intent, and they're missing it on purpose, and that's the problem. So this whole argument is pointless.
Well, I'm not really arguing with you. I'm just trying to. There is a discussion that needs to be had.
There is a discussion that needs to be had, but it has to be had by people who actually agree on an end goal of protecting people. And they don't. They just fucking don't. So you can't have a fair discussion with somebody who, I don't know, wants to kill Jewish or black people. Or who,
I agree.
I don't know, thinks that women should shut the fuck up, take their shoes off and get back in the kitchen. And, oh, you can't have babies anymore? Can you still be fucked, though? Well, you're kind of ugly and fat, so maybe not. You could just die now. Like, what? Like, how do you have a conversation with somebody and actually, like, no, I'm not pretending. No, I'm not playing that fucking game. Those people do not want to have a fair discussion. They want black people, Jews, women, whoever the group is, queer people, they want them to go away and die and leave them alone. But cook dinner and stick it in the oven on their way out the door. And bring them a beer real quick.
Right.
Get back in here, bring me the beer. Oh, and feed the dog.
Yeah.
But then stop being in my eyesight. Like, sure. That's what they want. And I'm not going to pretend otherwise. And these laws are supposed to, like, protect us from that bullshittery. And they can't as long as, A, we're not enforcing them, and B, we're allowing them to, on purpose, miss the goddamn point. Like, what is that called where, like, the point of the law,
intent?
The intent, like, I forget what the phrase is, but
okay.
It's where, okay, but you know what I'm fucking talking about. You know what I mean? And you can't say, come on, you know what the law is supposed to be doing. You can't say that, like, in a court.
Right. No, I think we mostly agree here.
We do. We do.
You know,
I'm yelling to you, not at you.
We have shitty people in power. And we can't even really have a discussion about it right now because ultimately, if anything were to get passed right now, it would be bad for us. So
right.
That's all. And
that's what I meant by going back to this. That's what I meant by it's good that it hasn't been changed on the books because it's one less thing. If we're ever allowed back in power ever again.
Sure.
Allowed back in power.
Yeah.
Then it's one less thing that we have to clean up because they will have changed the book so many other ways.
Right.
At least we don't have to fix that one. That's where I was going with that.
Sure.
Anyway, fuck those fuckers.
Yes.
I think is the ultimate of that.
Indeed.
So repealing the Johnson Act is going to mean that atheists, agnostics, and other non-religious citizens are effectively funding religious politicking that we deeply oppose. See?
Yep.
So, yay, love that for us.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so this is not the first time that somebody has tried to go up and knock this shit down, the Johnson Amendment. Okay, so let's talk about recent history. And I am building up to, but what happened this week? Why am I talking about it?
Got it.
Okay. The Republican platform has repeatedly included repeal of the Johnson Amendment, like repeatedly. They do not like it.
In recent history.
In recent history. That is what we're talking about.
Because as late as the late 80s,
yes,
it was not a partisan issue.
Right. It's been the 2000s.
Right.
Recent history. Conservative evangelical groups argue that it infringes on religious free speech.
Because they want to talk about politics real fucking bad.
Yeah.
That's all.
I know.
They want to endorse their candidates.
Yeah. So that they can get rid of the queers and put the women back in their place.
Yeah.
And get slavery back in motion again because it's fun to control people.
They realized where the power was. They were like, hey, we need to get these people up there so that we can do the things we want to do and get these other people out.
And the things that we want to do is be queer in the closet and pretend we're not. And we want to fuck women real bad and have them cook dinner and bring us a beer. Mm-hmm. And we want slavery so fucking bad.
Why don't you ever bring me a beer?
Well, for one thing, we don't have any beer in the fridge. For another thing, because you're a grown-ass man, you could get it yourself.
Yeah.
But thirdly, I drink more alcohol than you do, so I'd be more inclined to have you bring me one.
That's true.
But I think my fourth point, if I'm keeping count, is that usually if we are drinking, if I recall correctly, whichever of us is going for another one always offers the other, hey, did you want anything?
I was being,
Right,
yeah.
But that could not stand.
No, right.
Because no. So, just to be clear, husband never asked me to be barefoot and get back in the kitchen and bring him a beer and be pregnant.
Correct.
Because I don't have the parts for that
You
anymore.
just do the barefoot thing on your own.
I love being barefoot. I do not... do I love being pregnant? I mean, I've had several pregnancies and in misfortune. The 2 that I had, I was sick the whole time that came to fruition. I will say I love being a mother to my 2 kids, but I do not love being pregnant.
There you go.
But that's not my fault. It's because I get sick,
Right.
And my immunity is not good. My immune system.
Correct.
Yeah. All right. So anyways, in the 2010s is when this shit started.
Okay. All right.
So I said the 2000s, but 2010s.
Yeah.
The conservative legal group Alliance Defending Freedom, ADF, launched the Pulpit Freedom Initiative.
Those guys are fuckers. Just for the record.
PFI.
I just wanted to say that out loud because they're fuckers.
And they...
ADF, fuckers. Equals fuckers.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure I said that a couple times.
They're fuckers. ADF are fuckers.
Yeah, okay.
Not in the good way.
Yeah.
So they launched that initiative urging pastors to deliberately violate the law to provoke IRS action and test its constitutionality. So they wanted this to go where it went.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Donald Trump campaigned on repealing it, promising in 2017 to totally destroy the Johnson Amendment.
Yeah.
And then on May 4th, 2017, Trump signed an executive order instructing the IRS to relax enforcement of the Johnson Amendment for churches.
Okay.
That was an executive order.
He used the Star Wars holiday to
I
do
know,
that?
right?
Why?
May 4th.
That's rude.
That's like so opposite.
Yeah.
Like, no, you can't do that, bro.
Right.
It was called the Presidential Executive Order Promoting Free Speech and Religious Liberty. Because churches ain't free enough,
Right.
Those repressed bastards. It did not repeal the amendment because only Congress can do that.
Yeah.
But it ordered the IRS to relax enforcement, particularly around churches and implied endorsements. Yeah. This created ambiguity and effectively discouraged enforcement without officially changing the law.
Right.
Some churches have openly defied the rule by endorsing candidates from the pulpit.
I would say a lot have openly defied the rules.
I mean, I love the churches that just have their sign out front. Like, you can just take a picture of it, and it shows, like, support so-and-so, or so-and-so's my president.
Oh, we saw that a lot around
Ohio.
time. Yeah.
Yeah. It's beautiful. Love Ohio for that.
Something.
Yeah. The IRS has been reluctant to enforce violations, raising concerns about selective enforcement and erosion of the rule. No shit. Right-wing lawmakers have continued to push for legislation to weaken or repeal the amendment altogether. And here we are today. Current events. Why it's back in the news right now. Why we're talking about it today. July 7th, 2025 court filing. The IRS has officially reinterpreted the Johnson Amendment, filing a court statement saying churches may now endorse political candidates during religious services without fear of losing their tax-exempt status. What the IRS said: if a church in good faith speaks to its in good faith, that's the phrase I was trying to think of earlier.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. Thank you, church people, for giving me that.
Right.
It's so funny because y'all don't have good faith, even though, like, that's what, you talk about all the time. That's so funny. If a church in good faith speaks to its congregation using its usual religious channels, such as sermons, bulletins, that kind of thing.
Usual channels.
Usual religious channels.
Does that just mean any of them?
Whatever.
Okay.
It's clear.
If you use it, it's usual, right?
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
If it speaks to its congregation using these channels about electoral politics viewed through the lens of religious faith, it does not count as campaign intervention under the law.
Okay.
So even though the law says it does, they're like, no, that's not what that means. So they are literally gaslighting the law.
But they're still going to apply it to other nonprofits. So it only doesn't
applies
apply
to
churches.
Correct.
Got it.
Correct.
Okay.
The IRS likened this to a family discussion, implying it's informal, private, and protected.
Have we completely forgot about why we started this country in the first place?
Yes, we did. We did.
We left religious repression.
Yes. Many of us did.
Many of us did.
All.
Yeah, no.
Some left to start their own religion.
Right. No, I'm just saying, it's like there's all this talk about how we need to bring religion back into the government when, that was exactly not what we wanted when we founded this country. And people even use our founders as reasons. And I'm like, no, that's not what they fucking said.
They're like, they love it. They want to. And it's like, no, they were mostly agnostic. And if they believed in a God, it was a hands-off guy. That clockmaker dude.
Yeah.
It was a divine creator, not any kind of...
And I'm going to even say this. Some of them did have strong religious beliefs, but they didn't want them involved in our government.
Right. But I mean, I can remember people saying, I don't know, as a teenager, I can remember people telling me that there's not enough. Where was I going with that thought? Never mind. I lost my train of thought. Sorry.
Got it. Yeah.
Sorry. But yeah, we have forgotten. To go back to your point, we have totally forgotten what our country was about.
And even some of the most religious back then, and during our founding, they specifically were people that were the most adamant to have it separate because they didn't want a single. They didn't. If you choose,
they didn't want a king. They didn't want a dictator.
Well, no. If it's a theocracy, you end up with a state religion. Mm-hmm. You don't get to pick the fucking religion. It's going to be the religion that the government picks.
Right,
so,
but if you're Christian, that's good, and that's what they believe.
It's only good if it's your version of Christianity. And I'm sorry, but that is very different depending on who you are and where you are.
Yeah.
So you don't get to pick.
But
the picking is done for you.
For now, they are all united under the idea of America Jesus.
Because they've lost their whole concept of what it is to be Christian in the first place. Christian now is just a political ideology that a lot, not for all of them.
No.
But in large part on Fox News and on Newsmax and all these places that are media outlets, so to speak. Mm-hmm. It's a brand of politics, and that's all it is.
Yeah.
And this is just a furtherance of that whole fucking brand of politics.
It is.
Where they're trying to push this idea that religion can be this framework for furthering the right's rise to power for this fucking theocracy that we're trying to build.
Yup.
It's just bullshit.
It is total bullshittery. So when they likened it to a family discussion, the change allows churches to endorse candidates in their usual channels of communication, and they completely on purpose left that term undefined.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, what does that mean?
Right.
And they're like, oh,
anything.
Yeah.
Right.
Whatever we say it means.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. While enforcement has long been rare, this is the first time the IRS has publicly, explicitly said such endorsements do not violate the Johnson Amendment.
Right.
Now, it's important to note that the law has not changed. Like, there were a lot of people saying, the law changed, or they took the law off the books. Like, you know what I mean?
Right, which is not true.
It's not true.
Right.
And we need to be careful with how we say it, because that will be the argument used.
Right. But the official stance of the government entity that is the IRS has officially relaxed their viewpoint for churches on this whole thing.
Yes.
That is where we're at.
The Johnson Amendment still stands, but the enforcement of it as pertains to churches does not.
Right.
And that's different.
Yes. No, it absolutely is. But it again, like I was talking about earlier, this could still end up in courts.
Yeah.
And that could solidify it as the law of the land.
They could push this hard enough that they do change the law on the books.
Yeah.
Yeah. I see what you're saying now. The move came in response to a lawsuit brought by the National Religious Broadcasters, NRB, and several churches claiming First Amendment violations, freedom of speech.
Yeah.
So this raises the stakes because without enforcement, the amendment becomes symbolic only, encouraging unchecked religious political activism. Duh.
Right.
The IRS formally declared in a court filing that churches may endorse political candidates to their congregations without violating the Johnson Amendment. And just once again, to be clear, this was not a new law passed by Congress. Okay.
Okay.
It's a legal settlement in response to a lawsuit filed by 2 Texas churches and the NRB. Okay.
Yeah.
That's all it is. But it's still a big fucking deal.
Right.
So what the IRS now says is that endorsements made during worship services or usual channels of communication, which we already discussed, are not considered political campaign intervention. And the way they talk about a family discussion is an internal faith-based exchange that is constitutionally protected. But the problem is that the IRS and the plaintiffs jointly requested a court order that bars not just the Biden administration, but any future administration from enforcing the Johnson Amendment against the suing churches.
The Biden administration?
Yeah, that's what they're calling it. The Biden administration. Yeah.
What?
That's what they're still calling it.
Okay.
Yeah. Because anybody who comes after is... They're saying we cannot ever be sued. Nobody ever sue us.
Okay.
Okay? That's what they're saying.
Got it.
Don't let them sue us ever. So, anyway, the ruling did not extend to all nonprofits, as plaintiffs originally wanted, but it does create a clear religious carve-out, something many legal scholars fear could be exploited or expanded in the future.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the thing.
Sorry, I was still trying to figure out the whole the Biden administration thing, because that doesn't make sense.
Well, they're still going after, the Trump administration has sent people to investigate people from the Biden administration, and it's just like this whole thing.
It's okay. It's okay. I didn't understand why that was okay. But that's fine.
No, it's,
whatever that is, it's fine. I don't care.
This all came, FYI, from the New York Times and NPR, Politico. I'm trying to think what other. Well, I'll get there. I'll tell you about it because I have a section on the reporting.
Got it.
Yeah. So basically, what they're saying is that endorsements can be made to serve church services.
Yeah.
And so that sucks.
That's because that's a usual channel.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, I told you, like, I was trying to prepare this, and I ran out of paper and shit and stuff, and then whatever. Anyway.
Yeah, it was a mess.
It was a mess trying to get ready.
Yeah.
And I was running down the stairs, and it was horrible.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So what this means from a Christian perspective. Okay. There's an organization, not organization, is it a newspaper, like a reporting organization, a media platform, something like that, called Christianity Today?
Yeah.
Okay. This is their key insight.
Got it. Yeah.
In over 70 years, only 2 churches have ever lost tax-exempt status due to Johnson Amendment violations. One for opposing Bill Clinton in 1992, and one unnamed case in 2012. So while the law has existed, it's rarely been enforced.
Right.
This fact reframes the oppression narrative pushed by some evangelical leaders. The threat of punishment was largely symbolic, not prosecutorial. So, again, this is not a repeal, but it effectively guts enforcement.
Right.
And so they're just like...
Well, it's not... This isn't about actual repression. This isn't about actual laws. Like, nothing's really going to change with regard to how it's enforced. It's never really been enforced.
Right.
But
it's just this...
It's the idea that they're being repressed and pushing that same voice, that same, idea out into our legalistic landscape that
it's the victimization. It's the victimization that they keep crying about. Like, you never let me be the most white people in the room ever.
Right.
You never let me have slaves. You never let me fuck all the women and rape them and get away with the repercussions. Why? Why can't I be allowed to just be a fuckface? I don't understand.
Right.
Can't I? And, like, you're oppressing them by not allowing them to be the whitest rapist ever. Like... Just let them. Just let them. You're ruining their lives.
Right.
You're holding them back from their potential of mediocrity.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. Okay. So what it also means for U.S. democracy is this ruling, as you said, blurs the line between church and state even more than ever before. And it encourages political money laundering through churches. No transparency, no accountability. Yay.
Yeah. Must be nice not to have to report anything to, IRS.
Meanwhile, we're still getting fucking, you owe us taxes from a school district that we lived in like 100 years ago or something.
Right.
We're like, no, we paid you, but thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. We don't live there anymore, ever, for a really long time. You can fuck right off.
Yeah.
So, it is kind of funny. Like, they're like, you never let me get away with tax evasion. And we're like, we just want to live. For religious institutions, what the repeal means is that churches could become political arms funded by tax-deductible donations.
Yeah.
And this opens the door to massive campaign finance abuses, turning churches into shadow super PACs, which I love that. Super PAC.
Sure. Well, we've already been erasing political campaign safety guards that we've had.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean,
this is nothing new.
This is just another step down a dark road we've already been going down.
Yeah.
But
it's the gasp of, like when they repealed Roe v. Wade, right? Like, we were like, what the fuck? Because they've been fighting abortion for years and years and years and years and years, right?
Yeah.
And we knew, like, they were taking away funding, they were picketing, they were blowing up, clinics and, like, all of that, right? But the actual, like, a court saying shit out loud, like, oh, no, we're now going to do things the other way, the bad way.
Right.
That's what the gasp is about. It's not that these things weren't already happening. It's the finality of it. It's the explicit statement.
Yeah, yeah. And, I mean, it was, we repealed already, like, we had the McCain-Feingold Act that was, that was stopping a lot of this dark money, too. And, like, they've been eroding a lot of this shit slowly. And, like, they want this bad money to be able to get into politics because that's how they fund their fucking shit show that they're running.
They don't really care who's in charge. They just want money.
Right.
And they want whoever's in charge to be somebody who supports that idea real bad.
Well, yeah.
And Republicans are more about that. And Christians are more about allowing that.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
Here we go. Whee! For secular Americans, again, you'd be funding political campaigns via religion against your will. It directly threatens church and state separation and, everything we've already said.
Yeah.
For broader civil society, this sets the precedent for other 501c3s to turn all nonprofits into partisan tools.
Yeah.
In a way. Like, It could. I don't know that that's the goal, and I don't know that that's but it deserves saying out loud. It bears stating. For the record, this is a thing that could happen.
Right.
It definitely erodes public trust because it does deepen the divide between religious and secular citizens. And there are studies that show that majorities of Americans and clergy oppose pulpit endorsements.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about earlier. I mean, the reports I've seen on this says that, a large majority of Americans do not want this to be the law of the land. This is not the way we want things to go.
Like, well, too bad, though.
Right.
That's too bad. It is the way it is now. So, sorry.
Yeah.
Law professors warn, how do we define a customary communication? Going back to that, like, the church family thing.
Right.
They're like sermon, bulletin, live stream, TikTok. And the answer is, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Like all the things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, I'm going to skip this section because we already covered that.
Guys, I just have to share this because I'm still looking at about 15 pages.
Shut up. You're so rude.
So.
Okay. So there has been a long-running evangelical political strategy.
Yeah.
And obviously it just paid off. So, yay. Thanks to, what was that? Okay.
Something.
I know,
yeah,
on the page that I just put aside.
Yeah, right.
Okay, hold on. Preferable treatment.
So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Hold on. I'm sorry. I'm trying to, like, find...
15 pages of ill-prepared notes at that. So,
yes.
Yeah. This could be a long episode.
It's going to be bad. I'm sorry. The NRB's lead counsel is quoted as saying, "We think that churches and other nonprofits should be able to freely say whatever they want to say, including yell fire in a theater."
But that's
I'm
just
sure
it.
the rest of
can,
that sentence.
But you can say whatever you want to say as long as it doesn't endorse a fucking candidate. You can stand for any fucking viewpoint you want. You just don't endorse the fucking candidate.
No, but we want to.
Like, it's a simple fucking rule.
No, but we want to.
I know.
I mean, that's what it... Their whole defense is, no, but we want to.
And that's been the whole fucking thing since Trump's been in charge. Yeah.
Yeah, but I want to real bad.
Right.
Yeah. So, okay. Let me go to the next section now.
Okay.
Let me get
Is it
some
in
action.
the back section?
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the reporting on this.
Okay.
We're going to start with NPR. They got everything right, as they normally do, but they also missed the enormous policy shift that this represents in practice.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is, also normal.
Right.
Are you making fun of me because I stuttered?
No. Look, he said policy.
Policy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I am having a problem pronouncing things sometimes. And you laughed at me, and that's mean.
I'm sorry.
Like,
I still love you.
Well, that's good to know.
Even though you
Jesus
can't pronounce
Christ.
things correctly sometimes.
Oh, okay.
I'm just saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, everybody, when I first married husband, he used to say nuclear instead of nuclear.
I did.
So you can fuck right off.
I can.
Yep.
Okay.
So, as usual, NPR misses like the emotional impact.
Right.
I guess you could say. The unequal treatment between secular and religious nonprofits was not clearly called out in the reporting. And the phrase family discussion is repeated throughout their reporting without any critique. They're just like, they're leaving it as a, quote, family discussion, but they don't they're like letting the quote marks around that do all the heavy lifting of whatever that means. And I guess you guys will feel like we do but what does that mean?
Right.
This framing minimizes what could be full-blown campaign activity in megachurches with national reach, and they don't really say that.
Well, yeah, I mean that's one of those things that we've discussed. That's a problem with national media in general. They don't say what it actually could like.
They don't tell you the implications. They're like,
right.
We reported that it's raining. That's our job, and it's like, yeah, but what you didn't report is that the rain caused the dam to flood, and that the flood killed thousands of people and could have been avoided if so-and-so, and probably Republicans, had invested money in the dam to build up. But boy, you told us it rained. Thank you.
I think NPR oftentimes reports on a very, they don't want to piss off anybody, right?
They're trying to play both sides, and they're trying to be fair, but you cannot both sides some issues.
Right. You can definitely speak to the facts and make them sound more in line with what they could cause, and it could still be journalistic reporting. It's just
you could
they make
greater
decisions.
implications.
They make decisions to not do things that
and
strong.
they do Americans a grave disservice by doing so. And I do mean grave, deadly.
Still support them.
I love NPR. I wish that they, like much of the Democratic leadership, would stop being wimpy.
I agree with you.
I wish that Democratic leadership and NPR both, I vote blue no matter who, and I support NPR. Okay? Both. But I do wish that they would be more hard-hitting than they are.
But they're also trying to reach the message to people who may not listen. You know, like if you go too hard, it may not reach. They may not even know that these things happen. You're trying to reach people that these things may not even reach.
But then, without explaining the greater implication of why it matters, nobody is going to read it. Like just today, right? Like I was talking with your mom, right? And I was saying that, we're going to talk about the Johnson Act, and I'm going to call this, "You Can Suck My Johnson." And she was like, what does that have to do with religion? Like, what does that have to do with the church?
Yeah.
Like, what does that have to do with the Bible? Right? Like, she didn't understand the greater implications. She's like, I saw that the law was removed, but I don't know what any of that means. And so I had to explain, like, what is the Johnson Act? Why is it important that it's not been repealed, but reinterpreted?
Yeah.
And so NPR could have filled in those blanks for people, very intelligent and informed people like your mom, who didn't know.
I guess what I'm saying is that I don't know. There's a whole other discussion to be had about media that would fill a whole other episode. So that's a whole different take. Like you when we've got entities out there like Newsmax and Fox News, you know, NPR is definitely filling a gap, and they're filling a gap in a lot of rural areas that don't have news sources.
Yeah.
Right. So they reach people that don't actually have access to a lot of news.
And so they tell them it's raining.
If you go too hard, you're going to lose them for any type of news. But as long as you can keep them informed, they're better informed citizens who can actually somewhat make decisions based on what is happening. So it's a fine line that they're walking with regard. They can't always cater to us. They can't always cater to how we want them to do it, which is frustrating. It is frustrating as hell. Mm-hmm. But they're serving a lot of roles across the country that doesn't necessarily apply directly just to us. You know, like it's not just us who they're serving. And I understand the want for them to do more, and I agree with it to some extent. I've complained to you about it. You know, I'm not saying that I am not with you on this. I'm just saying that I think we have to think of the larger role that NPR and PBS play in the whole news media scene.
Speaking of which, you mentioned PBS, and I need to look into this more, but I thought I saw a headline that Netflix is saving PBS shows. And there was this whole, is Netflix the hero that we don't deserve, but we're getting? And I was like, well, I don't know about all that. So I need to look into that. Somebody call me out if I'm wrong. But I thought I saw a headline, something to that effect.
Okay.
So yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So with regard to NPR's bad reporting on this, or lack of better reporting, I should say, they failed to mention the dark money loophole this creates, which secular watchdogs and campaign finance experts have been warning about for years. So, you know, whatever.
Sure.
They reported the facts. They said it rained, but they did not dig into the ramifications, which I think is problematic, but whatever. The New York Times did a better job, but their articles stopped short of calling this preferential religious treatment or invoking potential constitutional conflict. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't frame the story from the perspective of secular or non-religious Americans, which is a crucial angle, considering that those are the people who will be harmed.
Sure. Yeah.
Politico did a pretty good job, but they slightly undersold the inequality between secular and religious nonprofits. let's see, Christianity Today that I mentioned earlier. They focused almost entirely on evangelical voices and motivations with little or no mention of secular, legal, or financial objections. But that doesn't bother me because that's not their fucking point.
Right. I mean, every news outlet's going to have to pick a editorial angle that they're going to be doing this from, right?
Right.
And they justify it for many different reasons. So
yeah.
and for fun, we listen to stuff that's a little bit more liberal or more progressive,
Yeah.
And so to me, it's not entirely terrible that these places don't cover all the facts because you can choose to go further. Yeah. You can choose to learn more.
It's
you
true.
can choose to research more.
It's true.
And I think that's ultimately like what media
what
should promote is the wanting to know more.
That's what democracy relies on, the individual informing themselves.
Right.
The problem is that they don't.
That's not the news's problem. Like that's the individual's problem. That's society's problem.
I'm gonna push back on that a little bit.
I'm going to push back on that a little bit with regard to NPR and PBS because they do promote things like science. They do promote things like curiosity. They do promote things like learning. I mean, they very much focus on furthering your knowledge of things in this world.
Right.
And I don't know that it's entirely fair to.
I feel like you're telling me step off my NPR, bitch. In which case,
I think this is the wrong time to be attacking them. Like that's not
okay.
And that's why I'm pushing back a little bit. So.
All right. I'll step back a little bit.
Okay.
The American Humanist Association also had a stance. They used really dark language that could, by some, seem over the top, like a dark day for democracy. Mm-hmm. But I think that they did it appropriately so, given the stakes.
Yeah.
They were not over the top to people with my perspective. They were emotionally direct for advocacy purposes and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, there's some quotes. I'm not going to do those because it's boring. Oh, no.
Oh, no.
What happened?
I don't know what happened.
It printed on...
You're looking at that upside down.
No, I'm actually not. Yeah.
Oh, it printed on printed paper.
It printed on printed.
Okay. Well, what's the gist of what you're covering there?
This was going to be how listeners can act.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I have heard of
it. I guess you can act by not printing things on paper that's already been printed on. Don't print things on paper.
You can fuck
that's
off.
Already been printed on.
That is how you.
That's how you can act.
You can also support watchdog.
Now.
You can support watchdog groups and organizations like American United for Separation of Church and State.
Yes.
The Freedom from Religion Foundation, which you mentioned earlier.
Absolutely.
They're fabulous.
Yep.
And the Secular Coalition for America.
Okay.
You can also contact your local legislators to let them know that you think this is bullshittery.
As you should always do. Yes. Especially in this day and age.
Yeah. I mean, like, some people make it their daily job to report on things that when they see separation of church and state being stepped on, they will report that.
No, I was actually trying to, I go down the rabbit holes of trying to, program shit. And I was trying to I was trying to create a Discord bot that would like kind of gamify a group of people like doing calling stuff together.
Yeah, that would be
And
cool.
I got really far with it and then it fell apart and I couldn't figure out how to make it work. So I gave up.
Boo.
But yeah, I thought I would really love like a Discord channel where we'd all just kind of like dial people together.
Dial a duty brain.
I don't know how that would work exactly, but it would be fun, I think.
I think we could just like be in our Discord group and be like, okay, I called my 5 people.
I think you said you were going to try to start a day doing that.
I was.
Yeah.
And then I didn't.
You should do that.
I should do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Remind me that I want to do that.
Remind you that okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Like literally the second that we stop recording, and then I hang out with the people on Discord for a little bit.
Right.
But the second that I leave the recording studio, I forget everything that I sincerely meant.
Right.
Sincerely meant with all my heart.
Yeah.
He's laughing at me.
It's like you should record this so that you can go back and remember what you said.
You're funny. You were also laughing because I used the word studio.
And then I looked around. I'm like, studio, eh?
I know.
Yeah.
I know. My cousin was like, "You have a studio?" And I was like, "Calm your tits. This is not a studio. It's a room in the basement that is not finished. It's still concrete floors."
I mean, you're doing heavy lifting by saying a room in the basement.
That is true. That is true. I would not sleep here. It's so bad.
Nope. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe with a cot. Maybe.
Maybe.
No.
In an emergency.
In an emergency.
Yeah.
With a cot in an emergency, yeah, I might do it.
Yeah. Like.
Might.
I mean,
if there's no other choices.
What would the emergency be that would, I mean, this totally off
Natural
topic.
disaster, obviously.
But what kind of natural disaster would we be down here for?
Like a tornado that tore down our house and we're just stuck down here.
All right. Apocalypse, zombie apocalypse.
Maybe, yeah.
But they would get through the drywall.
Probably.
Like, whatever.
Yeah. But we are in a basement, so.
At least.
And the windows are small. So,
you covered the windows for the studio
it's not
purposes.
like somebody couldn't knock that shit over.
I know.
But
yeah. I feel like zombie apocalypse would not be it.
Right.
All right. Anyways, another thing that you can do is when you're tooling around town in your car and you're just driving like to the grocery store and you pass your local church.
Yeah.
And you see that they have a sign up, you can still report it because the law is still on the books.
Sure. Yeah, no, and you should, because why not?
Yeah.
In fact, we should report it more just to inundate the fuck out of them.
Yeah. I was thinking that too.
Right.
Yeah. Because most violations do happen at the local level, especially near election season, and they go unreported.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
So you should do that.
I'll see if I can find the actual reporting site and then link that in the show notes.
Right. I mean, we had a church in this area, many churches in this area during the last Trump election that they were just like all out.
They were
in support of him.
Yeah.
And it was gross. It was really gross. You can also track endorsements from your local. Oh, I just said that. I'm an idiot. Okay. So I'm about to wrap it up.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
In conclusion,
yes,
the Johnson Amendment isn't about silencing churches. It's about protecting democracy from being baptized in partisanship.
It is.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. In a nation built on religious freedom, that means freedom from religion, motherfuckers.
Freedom from, I mean, I've said this before, but I mean, honestly, religious entities should be just as adamant about this as we are, because it's not written in the law that your religion, let alone your version of your religion, will be in power years to come. You are allowing things to grab our democracy and make it more difficult for us to separate out government powers from religious powers. And it's not always going to work the way you want it to. Like that there's no guarantee that Christianity even will be the dominant religion in another 50 years.
Right.
Like that. Right. There's no guarantee on that.
Yeah.
And you're just asking for trouble here. You're asking for, and it's just not necessary. Like we've operated pretty well as a country for hundreds of years without trying to make this a theocracy. I think we can manage to do that a little longer, and we probably should.
We should. For those of us who believe in government without sacred texts.
Yeah.
And elections without holy endorsements, the fight to reclaim the wall between church and state just got a lot harder and a lot more fucking urgent.
It really did.
And I don't like that.
I don't either.
Somebody was quoted as saying they didn't repeal the Johnson Amendment, they redefined it. They carved it up behind closed doors, handed one piece to the religious right, and left the rest of us, secular and religious alike, with a system where politics now hides behind pulpits. This wasn't democracy, it was a deal.
Well, and I agree. But I will say this too. I think that the most important thing that we can take away from this is that, as you said earlier, the law did not change.
Right.
Right. So we need to focus our energy on paying attention.
Yeah.
And making sure that this doesn't make it to the next step where it gets, codified into law through the Supreme Court. And that's where we need to make, we should be making a stand before it gets to that point. And that's why this is important to talk about now.
It's kind of like when women were shrieking about the potential of Roe v. Wade falling, and everybody was like, it'll never happen, and you're being dramatic, don't worry about it. And then it happened, and it was too late, right?
Right.
But we know that now. We know.
Yeah, so let's not let it get there.
Let's not let this be a Roe v. Wade.
Right.
Let's actually, stand up for the Johnson Amendment the way we didn't for Roe v. Wade.
Right, yeah.
Let's stand for the dick the way we did not stand for the vagina.
There you go. All right. Well, that was Suck My Johnson.
That was Suck My Johnson.
Yeah, act.
Yeah.
Hopefully you enjoyed the show, and we will be back soon. I think we'll probably be getting an episode together tomorrow,
yeah.
And we'll be back with the next episode for which book are we in right now?
What's that guy's name?
Malachi. That's right. So we'll be back tomorrow with that, and then we will see you soon. Bye. Hey, wife, I guess that's the end?
But husband, that's just sad.
It doesn't have to be. We are on lots of social media platforms like Twitter. Our handle there is sacrilegious_D.
For D's nuts.
Oh my God. Stop doing that. Anyway, we're also on Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest. There's a link to all of our social media sites at our website.
Ooh, we have a website?
Yeah, it's sacrilegiousdiscourse.com, where you can also find a link to our merch shop.
We have a merch shop?
Yep, we have podcast-themed clothing, mugs, notebooks, and more, as well as an atheist and science-themed products.
Wow, our fans should really go check that out right now.
Definitely. They can get in touch with us by sending an email to sacrilegiousdiscourse@gmail.com. But before they do that, we could really use some help.
Oh yeah? With what?
Well, it's not free running the podcast, and we need some financial support in order to get better equipment, which will free up time so we can concentrate on our podcast and our fans.
Okay, so what should they do?
Head over to patreon.com/sacrilegious discourse and sign up as a contributor on our podcast. Supporters there receive additional bi-weekly episodes that we record just for our Patreon members for as little as $2 a month.
Also, we'd really appreciate it if you would like and subscribe on whatever platform you're using.
And Apple Podcast reviews help us out tremendously.
Like and subscribe. Leave an Apple review. Join us on Twitter. Support us on Patreon. That's a lot of instructions. Don't forget to say thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, bye.